Do you ever remember not having enough food to eat because times were hard for your family?
No, I don't. I don't ever remember that. On West Center in Provo, we had a small farm. It was an acre and a quarter piece of ground. My dad used to raise a big garden. But even if it had not been for that, we still would not have been hungry. That was just something that I never remember.
About the ration books.
Oh yes, during the war, 1941, along in there, 40, 42. They used to ration a lot of things. Sugar, tires.
Wait, say that again.
Ration.
Ration what?
Sugar. Sugar. You guys used to laugh at me for that, but I don't know why you laugh because I always said it correctly.
I remember you actually labeling the sugar shaker SHIGGER.
Yeah. Well, because I tried to get you people to say it like you should. But they would ration it in tires and gasoline and so a lot of the things that you needed but we never went without food, never.
How did you get to school?
Oh, walked.
Uphill, both ways?
3 miles uphill both ways. Let's see, in elementary school I went to Timpanogos, which was about 4 blocks away, and junior high school was about 4 blocks away, and the high school was only 2 blocks away. So I always walked until I got a car, and then I of course drove the car to high school, which was 2 blocks.
Did you enjoy school?
The answer is no. There were moments, fleeting moments when I did, but by and large I did not.
Why not?
Schools were different in those days. It was a time. It was something to be endured. It was. I must have enjoyed some of it because I did learn some things, But the curriculum was just designed to fill up the time. I don't know. Having been a school teacher since then, I know a little bit more about what's required and how really lacking the schools were in those days.
But I always remember you as just hungering for learning. You were always reading something or...
Yeah, but that's quite different.
Yeah.
If you get a good book and read it, that's wonderful. But to sit in a class where nothing interesting is going on.
What are your most vivid memories from your childhood?
Vivid memories. The vacations that we went on as a family. Those were wonderful. I wonder if I'm losing my memory.
Do you remember Christmases very much?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had good Christmases. We really did. I remember being very excited about Christmas as a child.
Did you have any traditions that you remember?
Don't recall. I just don't.
How did you learn to play, or I guess I should ask, what kinds of musical instruments have you learned to play and how did you learn?
When I was in high school, I got a guitar and learned to play that because I was friends with 2 other young men who had guitars, and so I really wanted to learn, so I just kind of taught myself how to play guitars. My mother wanted me to learn to play the piano all the time when I was in junior high and elementary school, so she would require that I take piano lessons. And this was kind of a sore spot. The person who taught piano lessons wanted to teach me the classical method. You sit down, you learn how to read, and you play from reading a score. I don't know if she didn't know or she didn't know anything about chording or playing by ear, and that's what I learned playing the guitar. So I learned much more about playing the piano after I learned to play the guitar than I ever did before.
I remember being just entranced with you sitting down and playing the theme to The Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were the coolest thing. Wow, that's like magic.
I was.
My dad.
You're absolutely right. I was. But it's much more enjoyable, much more fulfilling to be able to sit down and play something from something that you've created kind of within yourself than it is to sit down and read what someone else has written.
Didn't you do French horn too?
Yeah, I did play the French horn. Played the French horn in junior high school, and then when I got to high school, I transferred to the baritone horn, which is like a trombone. Trombone with valves.
We're jumping, I guess, quite a bit of time here, but what did you find the most difficult thing about raising children?
I think there are two things. One is teaching my daughters to drive, and the other one is teaching my children to try to get along with each other. I remember that they would sometimes quarrel, for want of a better word, and I would tell them, well, I'm not supposed to let you do this. Why are you doing it? And scolding and try to reason with them. You can't do this. You're not supposed to be angry with each other, but they were anyway. But the hardest part, I think, was teaching my children to drive.
Present company accepted, though, right? I was a great driver. Well, by the time I was driving, most of my siblings were driving and
they
wanted to
taught
teach
you.
a different. Wanted to teach.
Let me ask you this. Did any of my siblings, or did any of your siblings teach you to drive without me knowing it?
I remember a hair-raising experience
Yes.
at the top of Clements Hill, that hill there, and yeah, Julie in her gold Honda. It was scary. Yeah.
I don't want to know that. I remember one night sitting sound asleep. Someone called, I guess it was Christine. Christine had gotten in a wreck. So I had to get up out of bed and go find her. And I remember it was on 8th South in Orem, I think, and seeing in the distance the red flashing light. Oh, there were times when it was difficult. I'm so glad you have that to look forward to rather than me.
What do you find most rewarding about being a parent?
I think seeing your children grow up and become viable, without any question. Although occasionally I have flashes of when they were young, holding them, on your lap and teasing them and playing with them and that sort of thing. That's more of a temporary thing, but the thing that really I think lasts is this idea of them growing up, being viable, having children.
And Dr. Seuss books.
Dr. Seuss books, yeah.
Do you need to burp?
That's pretty good. What was your first job?
My first job, I had a paper out. Salt Lake Tribune delivered it in our neighborhood.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was okay. I had to get up very early in the morning, at 5:30 every morning. And so you were kind of always tired.
Yeah.
That's probably why I hated school, because I wanted
You were tired. Would you consider yourself a creative person?
yeah, sort of. Yeah.
They tell you you're not supposed to ask yes or no questions, and I guess that's why. Oh, how about this one? I like this one. How would you describe your sense of humor?
Vivid, scintillating. Wonderful. Uplifting.
Dry. I'd
British.
throw in dry.
Dry. Okay. All of those things.
What's the most beautiful place you've ever visited? Maybe you covered this already with Southern Utah.
No, I think I've been to Hawaii. I've been to Southern Utah. I think
About Tracy Arm Fjord?
Tracy Arm Fjord in Alaska. I was there last summer. That is really spectacular. As far as a landscape scenery type thing, that's the most beautiful thing. But not detract from the others. Hawaii has some beautiful places too.
Yeah. Did you have pets growing up?
Yes, I had a dog. Her name was Lana. Lana dog.
Was she named after Lana Turner?
Yes, she was.
Was she really?
She was, because her hair color, the color of her hair was the same as Lana Turner. That's exactly right.
Kindred spirits, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you've always wanted to do but haven't?
As I read that question, the only thing that came to mind is I always wanted to build a color television set from a kit, but never did. Now don't do that because they're so inexpensive to buy. And
You have to go to China to do it.
no, their color TVs are not exceptionally more like they were when I was your age, for example.
Can you remember a place and a time when you were feeling truly happy and at peace? And would you mind sharing where you were and what you were doing?
You know, the time that I really was when I used to work in the Forest Service when I was about 17, 18 years old. And one summer I spent 3 months in a pack camp. That means that they would have mule trains bring our supplies in to us. We lived in tents and had a cook that would cook our food. It was just wonderful food. And then we'd go out around in the forest all day doing the work that we needed to do. That was probably the most worry-free, carefree time. That was really very pleasant. It really was, as I look back on it.
I remember you often saying, I was a cook in the Army. I know what I'm doing here.
Well,
Can
that
you
was.
clarify that for me? Because I
Yes,
never knew if
certainly
you,
can.
if you were
I've-
serious.
I'm a math teacher, so I frequently tell lies. That was one of those. I never was a cook. I pulled a lot of KP, what they called pull KP means KP is kitchen police. So you did all of the things in the kitchen that nobody else wanted to do. Scrub the floors, wash the dishes, set the tables, anything that anybody else didn't want. And I did an awful lot of that when I was in the Army.
Was it because you were in trouble?
No, that was just a routine assignment, but it seemed to come around to me more often than it did some of the other. I don't know why.
How did you like the Army?
I did not like it at all. To say it deep and abiding hatred is probably not accurate because we had a lot of fun. We really did. Me and the other guys, we had a lot of fun.
Why
Well,
did you join the Army?
I didn't. I
You were
didn't have a choice.
Wow.
I either had to join, which I did, for 6 months active duty, or be drafted for 2 years active duty. So I elected to join.
And how old were you?
22. So that was I remember being absolutely ecstatic the day that we left. I was in Fort Ord, California for 6 months. The day that we left to come home, I was just excited beyond expression to be getting away from that.
Yeah. So I remember stories about Grandpa telling tall tales. And one in particular where he hopped a fence and he had matches in his pocket.
Yes, he did.
Do you remember this story?
I do. It was in our home on 3rd West, and he was, we were out, I don't know, he was out goofing off with the boys or something, and he said, and we had built a fence from just across a small area in the backyard, and he said, I'll bet I can jump the fence. And I thought, no, you can't, that's too high. And so he kind of put his arms on the fence and pole vaulted over. And he had some matches in his pocket that he used to light the furnace in the church when he was custodian. And the matches must have brushed the top of the fence and lit them on fire when they were in his pocket. So he started slapping his leg.
Really? I've never heard that story.
And they were matches burned. He burned him.
But he really could pole vault over?
Well, yeah, he did. Because, it was a solid fence. It had a top rail on it. And he grabbed hold of the rail and pushed himself up over. So he did that okay, but for some reason the matches caught on fire.
Did he tell other tall tales? That was a true story, I guess.
Yes, that was. I don't remember very much. When he was a boy living in Thatcher, Arizona, and he never did tell me much about that. I just don't have anything else that comes to mind.
That's all the questions. Is there some great story that you'd like to tell, something you experienced? Or?
Yes, your first car and what you did to it.
My first car was a 1930 Model A Ford, built in 1930, and I got it about 1954. And it was a wonderful machine, but the guys in the neighborhood wanted me to make a convertible out of it, so we cut the top off. Well, the body was held together by this top. The structure, the way it was structured, that held it. So after I cut the top off, then the sides would wobble in and out, and the doors would fly open. So of course we took the doors off. So here I'm driving around in this old Model A Ford with no doors, no top. It was just like a basket thing that you could drive around in. It was. I bought it for $25. Sold it for $7 American money.
How much later was that?
Oh, maybe a year. Londi Lang and I drove that from Provo down to Coosharam one weekend and back. And boy, I would pay a lot of money to have that car today, like it was when I got it. It was really a pretty good car.
Speaking of cars, how did you come to be the owner of a Volkswagen? When did you get your first one?
Let's see, I got that car in about 1962. It was about a year old. It was a 61 Volkswagen. I got it in 1962, just because we needed a car.
Is that the ragtop one that I
Yes,
knew
it is.
when I was growing up?
That's the ragtop. It has a cloth top and a part that would fold back and open.
Tell me about what you did to the back of that car.
The back.
Do you remember?
Oh,
There was
we
no
put-
back seat.
Oh yes, I took out the seat and built kind of a platform back there to carry things in. and any time you wanted to, you could take the back part of the front seat off and lay down, and you could sleep in it. I used to take some trips and sleep in that car. I think I probably had 500,000 miles on that car, but in order to do that, I had 4 engines, several windshields. I don't know how many tires, but
And how long did you have that car?
had it from 1961 till probably 1980 something. 20 years.
Is that so? That's the one that you had when I was growing up.
Yes,
Is that
the
right?
white one.
Yeah.
If it was the
But
one
you
with the rag top, and I used to take tape to fix the top, tape it with duct tape.
Duct tape. And you spray painted it blue? Is that the same car?
Mm.
That was a different car.
No, that was a different one. Different one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember. We had several of them when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Tell her about hiking the Grand.
Oh yes, in 1972, it must have been the summer of '72. My brother Steve and I hiked the Grand Tetons, hiked to the top of the Grand Teton in Grand Teton National Park. We got up about halfway the first day, and the next day we went up to the top, stood on the top, and then came back down. As proof that we actually did that, my brother got the log. When we got to the top, there was a little scroll there where we could write our names and the date. And he found in a library many, many years later, he found our names and the date. So it must have been August of 1972 when we did that. He went up later. He went up last year, which would have been about 2010, and he got struck by lightning and decided that was his last trip.
Did you enjoy the hike?
Oh yeah, I remember being very frightened, but looking back on it, it was wonderful. Coming down, there was a place where we could rappel. I had never rappelled in my life, but he hooked me up to this in a harness and told me how to do it, and went off this place that was probably 75, 80 feet high, and down we went. And we made it. But I remember being frightened that it was a little beyond what I was accustomed to.
What's your favorite job that you've ever had?
I think the one I have now, where I'm teaching math in a junior college.
It's a university.
Oh, it's a university. Yeah, I think that's the most rewarding and the least stressful of any job that I've ever had.
You enjoy teaching?
I do. It. For some reason, I can enjoy this, and it's nice.
And lots of kids tell me how much they like what
Yeah.
a good teacher is,
Yeah.
and that they can understand it from him.
But I do tell a lot of lies. And whenever I do, I say, "Hey, you can't trust a math teacher." Come on.
I remember as a kid, you coming home with math problems for us, and there was one in particular where you said there was a frog at the bottom of a 20-foot well, and each hour he jumps up 3 feet and slides back 2 feet. And how many hours would it take him to jump out of the well? And, you know, the obvious first answer is, well, 20 hours. And you would look at me and you'd say, are you sure? And I'd think, 20 hours, that's all I can come up with. And finally, the answer came out that it was 17 hours, because on the 17th hour, he'd be at 17 feet, and he'd jump 3 feet, and he'd be out of the well. And the frog would hop away. And I remember you just hoping to pull the answer out of me, you know, just you knew it was in there if I would just think about it, and it was there, and you could see it, and it was...
Did I tell you the one about the pond that had a lily pad in the center of the pond? Every day the lily pond doubled in size. Oh, I should have thought of this earlier. How long would it take? I can't remember the details of it. I'm sorry I started this.
That's all right. My calculus teacher would tell us the one about how a car, there's a hill that takes 1 mile up and 1 mile down, and you have to get across the hill in 2 minutes. And if you're driving 30 miles an hour on the way up, how fast do you have to drive on the way down to get there in 2 minutes? And the answer is that if you drive 30 miles an hour to the top, it's impossible to get to the bottom in 2 minutes, because you've already taken up 2 minutes to get to the top.
Yeah.
So much fun. Math nerd. Do you have any other thoughts for posterity?
Life has been good, by and large. As I approach the time when it's going to be ending, there is a genuine feeling of excitement. Genuine.
About the next?
Yes, about the next one. It's going to be wonderful. And that's just the bad part. It's going to be so wonderful you can't imagine.
Who do you hope will be there to meet when you get there?
Oh, my dad will be there. There's no question. But think of the people in history that Abraham Lincoln. I want to talk to him. I just want to feel being near him. Good man. What a good man. And some of the historical characters. My friend Belden Durchie died. My sisters died. But they'll be there. I mean, it will be as if it will be very natural as you see them and renew acquaintances.
How did you feel about your sisters while you were growing up?
Good.
You didn't think they were pests?
I don't recall that feeling. Oh, a little bit, yeah. But not generally. That's not generally the case.
Ask him about his older brother.
How do you feel about your older brother, Lamont?
That was the past. And if you show this to him, I'll deny it. They'll say, you fabricated that, didn't you? He and I got along much better after we got older, after we didn't have to live together. But when we had to live together in the same room, it was tough.
Tell him you would sweep your beds up.
Oh yeah, my brother Steve. We used to sleep in the same double bed. He'd go out and play in the sand pile all day and come in without cleaning up adequately, and I hated to sleep in a sandy, gritty bed, so pull the covers off and sweep it with a broom.
Why did you have 10 kids? That's quite a lot.
Yeah, it is. 'Cause just felt like we should.
I'm grateful.
You
That's
say
all.
in your patriarchal blessing it said something about
Give you
having a large family or something?
I don't recall that,
Oh,
but just felt like we should. That's the only reason that I can give.
All right. Anybody think of any other questions? Posterity.
he's a very alert little boy for 6 weeks.
Yeah, most of the time he's sleeping.